Oren, we've spent a lot of time talking about safe to risk environments and as a leader fostering that safe to risk environment.
Yeah.
But what about an employee? How do you set yourself up to perform best in a safe to risk environment? And I know we've got some examples we'll go through. Before we do, I want to just frame, because I thought, we talk about materials we see and we coach clients on, but I remember myself as an employee many, many years ago, being at our head office in California, and was very excited. There was a whole team of people who had been gathered together from across North America for an advanced training. And we had phenomenal facilitators. It was a really phenomenal high-impact training session. And we were talking about a certain topic of operational performance.
Yeah.
And it was something the company was struggling to get buy-in into and traction on. And I was so excited because I had taken this best practice that the corporation had rolled out, had really got my team to buy into it, had then spent time with them explaining the value, asking their opinion, and they'd given pushback on some of it. And I said, well, look, we know the results are there. We had the proof points. Tell me how you see yourself being able to implement this. And we tinkered it a little bit. Net, we had some great results to share. So we end this training. There's probably 200 people in the room. Facilitator, who was a very key executive with the organization, had the microphone explaining how disappointed he was at the poor execution across the company, and really was hammering everyone terribly.
Yeah.
So naive Lara decides, think about how crazy this is. I'm going to bail him out with some good news to support him because I really bought into this. So I raised my little hand.
Wow.
Right? Of course I did. And I said, over here, I've got a great example on success. And he came over, he said, great. So I stood up and I shared with the group that I absolutely support person X and the company, and here's how my team executed. And I shared how, we took this great best practice, we tinkered with it slightly, and here are the results.
Right.
And I was completely lambasted.
Wow.
I was told, to quote, this is exactly what we're talking about. Don't change anything.
Wow.
This is exactly not what we want. And I remember thinking, is this a bad joke? I'm the only one who's executed on it, actually got great results, and I'm being yelled at in front of all these people.
Right.
It definitely left some emotional sunburn.
Sure.
And I can tell you, I really never saw that executive in the same light again, and lost a lot of respect.
Sure.
Because the credibility of, did you want results? Or did you want someone to follow the beat of your drum?
Right.
So anyways, that was a very real example. And so coming back to real time today, I'd love to hear from you because you kind of shared it with me offline, a great working example of an environment where you have to have, maybe that compliance with certain core work hours. Maybe it's a call center, maybe it's customer service, but there's maybe not as much agility in what you do with your time, but how we can still set up a safe to risk environment as a leader. And as an employee on that team, what can you do to really kind of go above and beyond and try to risk it to get to the next level?
Yeah, no, it's a delicate topic because we say, and for our followers out there, like when we say safe to risk, it's probably a better term. I'm just thinking as you're talking, I wrote it down, is safe to calculated risks, right? Because you can't just go haywire and risk everything.
Right.
And I think a foundation, I'll bring up this example now, is safe to risk once you've done, let's say you've got your day job that you need to do, so in a call center environment. Sure. And the specific example we were talking about was it's a call center where there's set calls, essentially 20-minute calls long, and doesn't provide a lot of leeway to risk, right? Because there's a lot of content you have to get through, there's an agenda you have to follow, and that 20 minutes gets eaten up very quickly. So for somebody to step in, and not a good risk would be to just throw the agenda away and just like free form on that call. So that's not what you want. You have to go about, because there's a lot of structure and discipline that's been put into that framework. So I think making sure that you deliver that, and this particular example is what this person did, was it was a coaching company essentially, and the person they were coaching, they were looking to get healthy and they liked a certain form of exercise. And so they got that, they finished the call, they followed the agenda, and in their own time, they knew where this person lived, and they went and they researched essentially a facility that matched what they want, and they got back to them and they gave them some insights as to how they could exercise, and actually located a facility that was close by for them. So that's such a great example, right? Because you're going above and beyond. You're risking because you're doing something that's outside of the convention of the script, but you are following the script at the right time, because that's important. and but you're sort of looking for leeway, and that worked out really well. And that's, as an organization, you absolutely want to encourage that, because people on the ground, you're just making a big difference at a personal level. And I can contrast that though with where it can fall down, right? So I was pitched once with one of these pyramid selling programs. It was like the Amway or one of those type. And it was interesting because I got the standard presentation. So there's someone who brought me into it, and their senior person that brought them into it was doing the pitch to me, and they went through the standard deck. And being a consultant, I know PowerPoint very well, and immediately I'm thinking, how I can improve this whole deck and make changes, and how I can be more effective in selling it and pitching it to the next person. And at the end, one of the slides was, and the people that are most successful at this are the ones that stick with the script. They don't change the slides. They don't change how you pitch it. They really stick with the script. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the reason for that is because if you're trying to build a sort of significant organization under you where you're getting people to do the pitch, when you veer and if you change the style and you change the content, now you're on a version. From a software development standpoint, you're branching the code, if you like, and now you've got something that is custom code, and you're passing that on to the people that you bring in. And then if they're doing the same thing and they're customizing it, then 3-4 layers deep.
Are you saying I deserve to be shouted at?
No,
I think you are.
I wasn't talking about you. But it was just a real example of my tendency is to sort of break from the norm. That's just my personality. But in that example, I would not be successful. I mean, that's why I didn't join up for that, because I couldn't do that. But so there's pros and cons, right?
And I think that's exactly the point for everyone out there who's listening. Your environment's going to dictate what works best for success, right? So if you are in an environment, Oren, where it really is about taking a standard packaged product to market with a certain market advantage or certain competitors, there's probably a skeleton structure you need to play within that's also going to have predetermined success factors, markers as to scorecarding onto what KPIs are required, right? And so how you break out and innovate is going to look a little different to whether you're working in a brand new startup where there is no KPIs or there is no predetermined success. So it's understanding, back to our Max discussion of quite a while back, does Max know what success looks like in his role to have the credibility of kind of contribution to be able to then go grab attention on something completely innovative and new? Because sometimes great ideas don't catch the right attention because they're not bubbled up with any credibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. It makes for me. And if I sort of summarize it from my perspective, it's, you want that safe to risk, because we've seen and looked at it from an employee or a leader perspective. We've looked at it from an employee perspective. And actually, I like the term safe to calculated risk better, because I think it's and personally, like, I take big risks, but what some people looking from the outside might not know is that pretty much all of those risks are very, very deliberate, and 100%. I calculate the downside. So I calculate what people refer to as the BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement or successful outcome. So I'm always looking at what's the worst thing that can happen. And sort of I understand that and I'm comfortable with that. So I'm willing to take a risk within those boundaries. So I think it's that calculated risk. So safe to calculated risks. And we've sort of drawn on a few examples. And so hopefully that makes sense. But it's calculated risk within those boundaries.